Good morning. This is Kathleen Clow with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Thursday, August 20th, 2026. Today's fire potential headlines include continued scattered storms across Utah, which will expand into eastern Nevada and Idaho tomorrow through the weekend. We'll also continue to see temperatures rise basin-wide through tomorrow with above normal temperatures expected, and we will see the potential for some drier storms across the northwestern portion of the basin Friday evening into Saturday, bringing a risk for dry lightning across western Idaho. Fuels wise, we expect overall fire danger to remain on the rise area wide due to those above normal temperatures and those dry conditions. Putting that to a map, today we expect to see those continued isolated mixed wet and dry storms across Utah, as well as an area of higher winds with low RH across northern central Idaho there, where we expect 25 to 35 mile per hour winds. Tomorrow, we expect to see some breezier conditions and higher winds across the Sierra Front, coupled with low RH, as well as some expanding storm coverage across the basin, including some drier storms to the west. And we'll start to see our storms down south turn a little bit more wet as this monsoonal push kind of moves in. And then by Saturday, our storm coverage will greatly increase. And again, you can see we expect to see storms on the drier side in the western half of the basin, and then storms moistening up on the eastern half of the basin. And we also expect to see a higher area of breezier and higher winds across the Sierra Front on Saturday in the orange there, and that will be mixed with that low RH and dry conditions as well. Current watches and warnings include heat advisories across central Idaho as well as portions of northwestern Utah, and then an extreme heat warning across the Vegas Strip area. And this is due to those above normal temperatures that we've been talking about. Over the last 24 hours, we didn't really see a whole lot of rain, just those scattered storms that we've been talking about, which were pretty isolated. Some of those storms did bring some higher rain totals. You can see some in the green there, which would be a half inch to maybe an inch of rain in some of those more isolated heavy downpours. But overall, pretty light precipitation in some of those storms. And some of those drier storms did come with some lightning as well, as you can see, especially across that kind of central portion of Utah where we only saw maybe up to a tenth of an inch. We did get some lightning with that. So concerns for lightning IA and holdovers with those as well. Today, Great Basin remains at a PL3, and we had 11 new starts for a total of 723 acres and a large fire growth of 1,448 acres. Satellite this morning shows clear conditions across much of the basin and some lingering storms kind of making their way out of eastern Utah. There you can see a few stray lightning strikes, but overall mostly clear skies. Smoke impact wise, over the next 2 days, we expect to continue to see smoke impacts across central Nevada from the Shoshone fire, and then we'll start to see some smoke impacts from the Crooked fire up in central Idaho there. And overall, smoke impacts across the basin do remain generally on the light side, and we do still have some smoke kind of coming in from neighboring areas like Oregon and California. But overall, just those kind of two fires putting out smoke for us over the next 2 days. Looking at our forecasted fire danger conditions over the next 3 days, you can see a lot more of the basin in that 80th to 97th percentile, a few darker red spots there up in the northwestern portion of the basin. And you can see overall no more yellow really on the map, mostly orange. And you can see for the Boise Mountains there, we do expect ERCs to rise and then have a slight fall from that little chance of precip and then go right back on the rise. So they will remain in that 90th to 97th percentile up there. And then for the northern Sierra Front, we're continuing on that upward trend. And you can see ERCs will be almost approaching that 90th percentile by the end of the 7-day period. So overall, definitely seeing rising fire conditions. Looking at our next 3 days, weather pattern wise, you can see those continued pockets of dry air remaining across portions of the basin, as well as some precip kind of moving in. And we could see those pop up storms really anywhere in the black in these next 3 days. But really, the big picture takeaway here is that low pressure system creeping closer and closer, bringing increased storm coverage through Saturday, which will be kind of our more risky day storm wise for us. And you can see in our significant fire potential maps, we've got those dry conditions across the west and the moderate there, as well as some winds coming in on Friday across the Sierra Front, which we've added in. And then on Saturday, we'll really start to see that lightning potential, which is really kind of Friday evening into Saturday morning is when we expect to see those thunderstorms, but they could bring some dry lightning with them, followed by some windier conditions. So we've got some wind triggers across western Nevada there, as well as those lightning triggers across kind of that northwestern portion of the basin. Looking at the next 3 days, we expect to see some breezier conditions up in northern central Idaho there, and then also across portions of the Sierra Front and central Nevada today. Tomorrow, we'll see an increase in wind across the Sierra Front, and then less breezy conditions across central Idaho. But then on Saturday, winds will pick up again across much of Nevada and northern central Idaho. And then we'll also see some locally breezier conditions across Utah all 3 of these days, but that will mostly be from those kind of gusty storm outflows as their potential remains through the weekend. For Thursday, we expect to see again those low RH values. You can see those single digit values on the map there across the western half of the basin, as well as some teens across eastern Utah there, where they are seeing those kind of mixed, maybe some a little more on the drier side storms over the next few days. On Friday, we'll see a slight increase in RH values across Utah from that kind of little monsoonal push, but for the most part, staying in the teens and single digits across the west there, especially up in Boise, you see that 8% value. And then by Saturday, we will start to see RH values increase and recover a little bit, but again, we're still in the low teens across much of that western portion of the basin, and still not even back up into the 20s across those lower elevations of Utah. So recovering, but still not necessarily green or very wet. Precip wise, you can see again today, we expect those kind of more isolated, scattered mixed storms across Utah, but that coverage will expand tomorrow to cover some portions of the eastern half of Nevada and up into Idaho as well. But again, still pretty scattered and isolated. And then by Saturday, things will increase again coverage wise and kind of shift a little bit more north. And you can see we'll have some higher coverage of storms across portions of Idaho there, and then also impacting central Nevada. But again, the totals from these not super impressive, maybe up to a tenth or quarter of an inch in some spots each day, of course with higher amounts in the higher elevations. Temperature wise, temperatures still remain 5 to 7 degrees above normal. You can see a lot of triple digits on the map today, 100 up near Boise, a lot of 101s on the map, 105 in eastern Utah, and those will kind of persist into tomorrow. We'll actually see some temperature increases across Idaho, and then by Saturday, those temps should come back down to more near normal values, just kind of like the low to high 90s across much of the basin. Looking at Sunday through Tuesday, you can see that massive dry air pushing its way into the kind of northwestern portion of the basin and really kind of persisting through Tuesday there. And that will bring with it obviously those dry conditions, but also some breezier winds. And so you can see on Sunday in our maps, we've issued a wind trigger across a large portion of northwestern central Idaho. And then we will keep those moderate conditions persisting across Nevada, which will continue and also expand to the east through Tuesday, so you can see much of that kind of western half of the basin in that moderate category for those dry conditions. And we do expect to see that continued kind of pop-up storm potential across portions of Utah there, which will remain in the little or no risk category. On Sunday, our main wind concern will be across central northern Idaho there, and you can see some of those areas in the orange, kind of that orangey green, where we expect those breezier conditions. And maybe some of the higher elevations of Utah will also see some breezier conditions, as well as a portion of central Nevada. Going into Monday, we can see the continued breeziness along kind of the Sierra Front, western Nevada area. And then Tuesday, that area will expand across western Nevada to include more of kind of that central Nevada region, and we will still see some maybe more breezy conditions across the higher elevations of central Idaho there. RH wise, RHs will still remain in the teens. You can see 14 in Boise on Sunday. So overall, we'll start to dry out again following that kind of mixed dry storm push. And then again, across eastern Utah, RHs still in the teens, and those will start to fall day to day. You can see, that 11 on the Nevada-Idaho border. So overall, just still remaining pretty dry, a lot of orange on the map, and then starting to dry back out through Tuesday. Looking at our precipitation potential for Sunday through Tuesday, you can see that decreasing storm coverage across kind of the west and portions of Idaho there. So we'll see less and less of a chance for precip across much of Nevada and that kind of western portion of central Idaho. And we'll still continue to see that kind of persistent moisture coverage across the eastern half of the basin, including much of Utah as well, where they'll continue to see day after day of some rain totals in some of those isolated areas. Temperature wise, we will see quite a bit of moderation in the temps. No triple digits anywhere except the strips, which is expected, but really some low 90s, mid 90s overall, much more recovered temperature wise compared to this week. Looking at our next 7 days of precipitation, you can see that continued storm potential across Utah really through all 7 days. And then we'll see some increasing storm potential across portions of Nevada and Idaho, kind of Friday through Sunday. And then things will start to decrease in coverage again going into Wednesday, but still, again, the high elevations of Utah and those kind of higher elevations of Idaho will continue to see some precip potential. But overall, after this weekend precip push, we will start to see a drying out happening again. To summarize our 7-day fire potential outlook, you can see Thursday, a lot of moderate on the map. We'll start to have some wind triggers move into the area on Friday, kind of that Sierra Front area. And then we do expect to see that kind of Friday evening into Saturday lightning potential. So we've got a lightning risk on the map for Saturday there, as well as some wind triggers across western Nevada there too. On Sunday, following that lightning potential, we do have some wind triggers across kind of western central Idaho there. And then Monday through Wednesday, we'll keep that kind of western half of the basin moderate, which will expand from kind of west to east to cover more of Idaho as things dry out. And we will keep the eastern half more in that little to low risk category due to their kind of continued precip potential day to day. Looking at our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, you can see we continue to see that chance for above normal temperatures basin wide. And then looking at our precip outlook, now much of the basin is in that near normal category, which for this time of year is more on the drier side. But we'll be keeping an eye on that to see when we might get our next monsoonal push. But for now, it looks like the basin will remain at normal for precip. That concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.